most of you realize that there are halachot, there's laws in our religion, and there are even laws that govern monetary interactions. One is not allowed to steal. There's a law that says you have to pay wages on time. In fact, somebody who pays a worker late is actually violating a halacha. You're not allowed to charge interest when you loan money to a Jew, unless you make it into some kind of a business transaction. But a straight loan, you're familiar with these laws, monetary laws. We're going to leave the area of strict halacha. We're going to leave the area of strict law. And again, I think we have a couple of lawyers here. And lawyers get paid a lot of money to make sure that I stay within the framework of the law. As long as it's legal, that's all I care about, hopefully. Right? So in Judaism, we also have a concept that is not simply legal, but we're interested also in whether it's ethical, whether it's moral, whether it's even holy. Okay? I know when you think about holiness, so you think about maybe about Yom Kippur, or you think about the temple service or some of our rituals, but we're going to see that holiness exists also in monetary laws. So let's open with the first source, if you will. It's not on the cover page, it's on the first source sheet, first source. So this is a verse in Sefer Dvarim in Deuteronomy, Ve'asita hayashar v'hatov. The Torah commands us to do yashar is straight, tov is good, beinei Hashem, in the eyes of God. What does that sound like? What do you hear some kind of a legal structure there?
It's too open to interpretation.
At best, it's a very, very nebulous command. Do what is straight and good in the eyes of God. Right? Hard to understand that there's anything specific being legislated there. Says the Ramban, Nachmanides. We'll go straight into the English. And you shall do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. Our rabbis have a beautiful midrash on this verse. They have said that which is right and good refers to a compromise and going beyond the requirement of the letter of the law. It's a commandment. There's a law to go beyond the letter of the law. Right? And we're going to elaborate. The intent of this is as follows. At first, Moshe, stated that you are to keep his statutes and his testimonies, which he commanded you. Meaning, all the laws. You have to keep the laws. Don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't do malachan Shabbat, take a lulav on Sukkot, right? All of the commandments. And now he is stating that even when he has not commanded you, give thought as well to what is good and right in his eyes, for he loves the good and the right. There's such a thing as the spirit of the law. What does God want from me? Besides asking whether if I do it, is it technically legal, there's a concept of trying to understand, how do I implement the will of God? Now, this is a great principle, for it is impossible to mention in the Torah all aspects of man's conduct with his neighbors and friends. Now, this is a great principle, for it's impossible to mention in the Torah all aspects of man's conduct with his neighbors and friends and all his various transactions and the ordinances of all societies and countries. In other words, if we would have to legislate every single potential interaction that a person has in the financial area, in his interpersonal area, with neighbors and with employees, and in the store with a storekeeper, and all, got to legislate everything, it would be impossible to cover all the bases. And right? But since he mentioned many of them, so what we do is he says specific laws. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer, meaning the prohibition of Lashon Hara. A person's not allowed to tell things about other people. No water cooler gossip. It's a Torah prohibition, water cooler gossip at your office. Thou shalt not take vengeance, right? Nor bear a grudge. It's a Torah prohibition. Neither shalt thou stand idly by the blood of thy neighbor. If you see somebody in danger, you are required to intervene. You're not allowed to look away and say, it's not my business. Thou shalt not curse the deaf, because the deaf person can't hear you, so you might think that it doesn't matter. Thou shalt rise up before the hoary head. Meaning, a person who is honorable, you have to stand up for elderly people. You have to stand up for great Torah scholars. These are interpersonal requirements. But that's the legislated specifics. Then Moshe, he reverted to a state in a general way that in all matters one should do what is good and right, including even compromise and going beyond the requirements of the law. Again, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to live a life that is aligned with the will of God. And God is not simply interested in refraining from technical violations, but God is interested in a holy life, in an ethical life, in a life of service, in a life of helping other people. And therefore, it's hard to legislate every single possible situation, but rather we're given this general, very, very ambiguous command about doing what is right and good. And then the rabbis stepped in and rabbinically started legislating certain examples of this. Let's see them. Other examples are rabbis' ordinances concerning the prerogative of a neighbor, meaning right of first refusal. One of the laws, again, if you stick around long enough, we can get to this in a business class setting, is that if a person is selling a property and he has an adjacent neighbor, so the law allows the person who purchases the property to be removed by the adjacent neighbor, removed at full purchase price, of course. In other words,
if they don't like the new neighbor.
No. I own a property, and Ian is my neighbor. Okay, in those days it was agricultural fields, but we could talk about a storefront. Let's say there's a row of storefronts, okay? And I own one and Ian owns another, and I want to sell. So I go and I sell to Hesh for $100,000. Now, Ian would very much like to have connected stores. It would be, all right, so the law allows, a rabbinically legislated law based on this verse, the law allows Ian to go to Hesh and give him $100,000 and remove him, to basically buy the property from him, because to Hesh it doesn't really matter. There's lots of stores available and he could buy anywhere, whereas to Ian it makes a very big difference that he should have an adjacent store if he wants it, and therefore the law, it's a law of morality, it's a law of ethics, it's a law of asita yashar v'atov, do what's right. And what's right is that if I'm selling, Hesh shouldn't buy the store that's adjacent to Ian without giving Ian the right to first have the first offer. Let him go look somewhere else. All right, so that's the law of adjacency. So that's a rabbinically legislated law built on this verse. Another example, that a person is supposed to maintain his reputation. You want to behave in a way that people want to do business with you. That's a requirement to be a godlike person. We want to have an example. There's an example. There was a fabulously wealthy Canadian who passed away a number of years ago, but he was very famous in his business ethics. The word on the street, there was an article on him back in Business Week in the 1980s. And the word, in the article they said, businessmen felt that the word of Paul Reichman is more valuable than a signed contract with any other businessman. Okay, you lawyers can probably appreciate it and cringe at that. Okay, he's the kind of a guy that puts you out of business because we don't need contracts. His word is better than a signed contract with somebody else. There was a very famous story when they were negotiating a multi-million-dollar mortgage deal, and they're sitting there with the bankers and all the the principals and the bankers, and they're thrashing out all of the details. And there's somebody there taking notes, and they finish up the document, they look it over, and he says, yes, it's fine. Okay, they agree, they come back, everybody agrees, and they're getting up to leave. And one of the bankers who was new says, what's going on here? Mr. Reichman didn't sign. So one of the older bankers said, his word is much better than a signature on a piece of paper. Okay? And so he was what we call a walking Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. Now we have the opposite, unfortunately. Okay? Because when the same way that people impute to him this holiness in business ethics because he's an Orthodox Jew, and he flaunted the fact, he did not hide that he was an Orthodox Jew. He had a beard and he had a yarmulke. He walked around, all the pictures in business magazines, there's always with his big black yarmulke on. He used to close his building sites on Yom Tov. Because a Jew is not allowed to really have building sites open because a Jewish person is not allowed to have his business operating on Shabbat. So to close a building site on Saturday, that's not a problem, because anyway, it's a 5-day work week. But what about on Pesach and on Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah? So, well, he closed the business. He closed the construction sites are not open on Jewish holidays. Now, is that a neutral thing? Who's going to lose money there?
The workers.
The workers are going to lose money. They want to work, and he's saying, no, we're not running the business site. So he paid full salary. He paid full salary to his workers, even though the building sites were closed on Shabbat. He also lost money, you realize. Because in construction, every day that it takes you longer to get that project up is another day of expenses. So he was willing to both delay the project and pay the workers not to have a business site open on Shabbat. There are loopholes. He could have found loopholes, but he didn't look for any loopholes. Okay? So that's the idea of having a great reputation. Okay? That your reputation be unblemished, that one's conversation with people be pleasant. Thus, a person must seek to refine his behavior in every form and activity until he is worthy of being called good and upright. That a person should be a very honest, ethical person. Okay? So this is the introduction on a conceptual level. We're now going to see some sections in the Talmud that describe examples of this. Let's stop here for a minute and get questions.
Are there cases in when there is a conflict between good and right?
Elaborate on that. Give me an
If
example.
something that is, I'm not thinking of an example, but if something that is right according to the letter of the law, but not to the spirit of the law.
So-
Which you find in normal law, but I don't know if that happens in...
Oh, absolutely, all the time. And therefore, the technical law would allow me to do a certain way, but this requirement, if I want to fulfill this properly, would require me to forego my demands according to the letter of the law and fulfill the spirit of the law. Absolutely.
But what if the letter of the law says you should do A, and the spirit of the law says you should do B?
I'd need an example because I think that when you come down to it, you will see that it's a question of whether somebody's going to compromise or let go. Or in the business world, they say, there's some people, if you have, those of you guys been in business know that you can interact with a person who never leaves a dollar on the table. He's going to squeeze every dollar out of the deal. And there are other people, they're okay, we're not going to make a big deal out of this, okay? So technically, I'm allowed to make a big deal out of it because it's mine, I'm entitled. That's, I think, it's usually in that direction. The law entitles me, and the Spirit says, let go. All right? Whereas I think what you're saying is the conflict is that if I let go, I will violate a law. That's what I think you're looking for, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think, that's where I would need an example. Hard for me to imagine such a thing could happen. And if it did, we would have to sit and judge it specifically. Yeah?
So you mentioned a Jew's not supposed to have his place of business open on one toe. So let's say that let's say the business is not in your name, let's say it's a corporation. And technically
Yeah.
speaking, the corporation's making profit.
Right. You're a stockholder or you're the owner?
Well, let's say it's just a closed corporation. Yeah, it's a small corporation, and you own 100% of the shares from the corporation.
Right, so it's yours.
It's yours.
The only reason it's a corporation is for tax purposes and liability purposes.
But what? Okay, so technically speaking.
So it's yours. It's yours, okay?
Well, it's
Just make it a simple case.
okay, but technically speaking, it's all right.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. No, I want to give you. No. Let's flesh this out for a moment. It's a very important distinction.
But generally speaking, it's not yours. The profits come through the corporation, and then
You're a stockholder.
But
it's your stock. Okay, but
who else is
And the
gonna-
corporation is. You would like to say that this corporation is some kind of an amorphous entity that exists in cyberspace or in the cloud, right? Or in some virtual reality, and therefore you can't hold a virtual reality halachically liable.
that's my question. Yes.
Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so the halakha deals with this. The more modern halachic disciples deal with it because even though you will find in the Talmud a concept like it,
Right.
okay, but in general you need to structure it in a way that gives some holding to a non-Jew.
Okay.
If it's all yours. And it's not allowed to be open on Shabbat, especially if it's known to be a Jewish corporation.
So going
A
back
company.
to your previous example, to what was it, Eichmann?
Mr. Reichman.
Oh,
Reichman, yes,
Reichman,
Mr.
okay.
Paul Reichman.
So, technically speaking, he could have had his business open, but if he didn't touch the profits, he could have had a business open and just given it to his employees if he wanted to.
Okay, see that already, as long as they were non-Jews. Now here's where you have to bring non-Jews into the equation so that a Jew doesn't benefit from the Shabbos violations. Again, beyond the scope. If any of you guys have a deal and you want to figure it out, we have rabbis and businessmen who know how to structure it in a way that doesn't violate. By the way, that's not beyond the letter of the law. That's absolute law. In other words, a person who has a store, even if he stays home, he's not allowed to keep the store open on Shabbat and have other people there working for him, even if the people are non-Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he owns the store, if it's his private store, I own a hardware store, I own a grocery store, and I'm going to leave it open 24/7, and I just won't go in. I'll hire non-Jewish workers to run the store on Saturday. Not allowed to do that. All right, so you have to structure it in a completely different way. Okay, so let's. Yeah, go ahead.
I have two
Hesh,
questions.
yes.
On the law of adjacency, what if there is not a separate storefront that I would be able to purchase? If the location to me is important, like if I'm buying a house?
Excellent question. Again, when we do the shiur on adjacency, hopefully you guys will either come back to the yeshiva for a longer stay, or when I'm in Philadelphia, I sometimes do businessmen shiurim, and we'll have the guys set up a shiur about adjacency.
Okay.
The law of adjacency exempts a person who buys something unique. In other words, the whole reason why we allow Ian to give you your purchase price and send you packing is because we say to you, Hesh, listen, to him it makes a difference to have adjacency or to go somewhere else. To you, what difference does it make if you have a store here or a store there? You're there to make money. But if there would be something unique about it, it's a one-of-a-kind residential house, which happens to be next door to his, and he would like to expand, but you like that house, and you can't find a similar house anywhere else, laws of adjacency are suspended, because, here's the rule, we're implementing a law that we're implementing the verse V'asita yashar v'hatov, to do what's good and right. But doing what's good and right can't be at your expense. It can't be not at your expense, and also what comes back, it can't be at my expense. Remember, I'm the seller. Well, if every buyer knows that at any moment Ian can get him out, I'm going to have trouble selling. So I need to be protected against that. I need to be protected against doing something that's good and right for Ian, who has the right of adjacency, but it shouldn't be not at your expense and not at my expense. Okay, so that's the details. That's where we get into all the details.
And I have another really quick question. How do you handle someone who is doing something by the letter of the law but not in the spirit of the law?
How does who handle them?
For like, how if I see someone who is doing something that I don't agree with,
Yes.
but they're doing it by the letter of the law but not in the spirit of the law,
Yes.
do I approach them or do I just?
Are
they're doing by the letter
they
of the law.
asking you?
No.
So
But
why are
for
you
example-
why are you mixing in?
For example, let's say I see someone who is supposed to be dressing conservatively, and most women are supposed to be so.
Is anybody asking you?
No, not
So why are you mixing in?
Plus you drive benefit anyways.
Why are you mixing in? No, there's a very important rule. In other words, we can't be the world's policeman. If it's damaging you in some way, and as if you're involved in the deal, and you think that, hey, he's really not behaving properly, you can suggest to him. But it's also, we're going to see in a very extreme case, maybe we'll just throw it open as an issue, is this idea of a ve'asita yashar v'hatov, going beyond the letter of the law, is it enforceable in court, or is it completely voluntary? Well, your first reaction should be voluntary. It was almost an oxymoron. If it's enforceable in court, how do you enforce in court going beyond the letter of the law? But we're going to see it's not so simple. Yeah.
Is there any halacha behind who's considered a counterparty? Let's say if you're transacting with like a government entity, or if you're transacting with, I don't know, some type of, is it still viewed as a business transaction?
You know what let me see if I understand the question correctly. What you're asking is whether this law of ve'asita yashar v'hatov, does it only apply to live flesh and blood human beings, or does it also apply to entities?
Yeah, I mean, meaning like commerce, business, as opposed to maybe a transaction where the counterparty is government, and then, it might mean more viewed as,
Okay, so I have to be careful here because we're on tape. But in general, I would not expect that the law of ve'asita yashar v'hatov, going beyond the letter of the law, applies to governments. It applies to people. All right, it applies to people. Governments, there's no mitzvah to treat a government beyond the letter of the law. That would be my default. But again, I'd always be open to specific exceptions. In general, you're not required to round your taxes up. When you're dealing in a business deal, and listen, this is a guy. I'm a very fabulously wealthy guy. We're going to see an example like this in a minute. I'm a fabulously wealthy guy, and I'm making a deal with a guy, and he's really struggling, and it's his first business deal. So it would be nice to round up. Okay, in a government, there's absolutely no requirement. No requirement. Okay, that's what I would say. So let's see some examples. Let's see some stories. Okay, so here's the first story. Porters, meaning movers. These are guys who were hired as movers. Were hired by Rabbi Bar Chana. They were hired to move barrels. They had a group of barrels, and he was hired to move a barrel or barrels, and he broke a barrel of wine. And it happened due to a kind of negligence, a semi-negligence. And the story is a complicated story, and it's not clear whether it's technically negligence or just they weren't doing the job as well as they should have done the job. But Rabbi Bar Chana felt that they were liable for damages. They broke his barrel, they are liable for damages. He was afraid that they're going to run away and not pay him, so he confiscated their shirts as collateral for payment for the broken barrel. In other words, they had probably taken off their shirts to work in the hot sun. Their shirts is a valuable thing. It's collateral. He confiscated the shirts as collateral to make sure that they're going to pay him for the broken barrels. They, the workers, came to Rav. Rav was the judge, the rabbinic judge in the city, to adjudicate the case. And Rav said to Rabbi Bar Chana, give them back their shirts without receiving payment. In other words, I'm not going to let you hold on to their shirts as collateral. So Rabbi Bar Chana, said to Rav, is this the correct law? Meaning, the law says that I'm allowed to hold the shirts for collateral. And Rav's response was, in order that you should walk on the path of the good. Law or beyond the letter of the law? What is that, a legal statement or an ethical statement? In order that you should walk on the path of the good. Basically, what he's telling Rabbi Bar Chana is that I'm making you give back the shirts so that you should fulfill the verse, walk on the path of the good. Hold on just for a minute, okay? Okay, fine. So Rabbi Bar Chana listened and he gave them back their shirts. Till now, they're arguing over the shirts for liability. Now, in good Jewish chutzpah character, the workers turn around and they say, we are poor people. We've worked all day. We're hungry. We have nothing. They're asking for wages. They want a day's wages because they spent the day moving the barrel. They were hired to move the barrel. They ended up working to move the barrel. They ended up breaking it. So they worked. And Rabbi Bar Chana didn't get what he paid for. They want a day's wages. What do you say? Well, Rav's response was, second to the last line, pay them their wages. He responded to Rav, is this the correct law? Rav said yes, and it's a continuation of that verse that we started, and keep the paths of the righteous. So Rav is demanding from Rabbi Bar Chana in court to go beyond the letter of the law. Yes, now I'll take Josh's question.
Two questions. One is, would it make a difference if it was gross negligence versus just negligence?
That happens to be an excellent question that is discussed in the Talmud, or it's discussed in the later commentaries. That's a good question. That's why I said
something unethical, which then results.
Yes. So that's why I said it was an ambiguous case of the level of their negligence. That's exactly one of the points. We'll say it better. Let's take an extreme example. Okay, Rabbi Bar Chana wasn't in court because he took their shirts because they didn't pay him money, because they broke the barrel, but he was in court because they stole something from him. And he takes them into court, and they say, we're poor, we have no money, please let us keep it.
What?
No, what do you think the answer would be?
Give it back.
Absolutely give it back. In other words, it's only, this idea of going beyond the letter of the law is only when there's some ambiguity here. Okay, but if they were thieves, or if they owed $100 clear, then of course he has to pay. There's no beyond the letter of the law. This is where there's an ambiguity here, and it's not impossible, by the way, that they were going to end up having to pay for the barrel. The dispute here was over whether it was legitimate to hold the shirts as collateral when they need the shirt. You see, there's where we're getting into the ambiguities. Okay?
And
yes.
The other question might be touch on what they were asking. They'll have to translate it, but what if he hired a company, so they didn't work directly for him? Let's say they were in business for themselves and they had a company and he hired them to move. So now they broke something and he wants to hold some collateral.
Okay, so here we get into the difference maybe between Jewish law and secular law, as well as the way that the economy is set up. you're asking a difficult question, which I am not going to answer. I'll just point it out. And that's why we can't even pull it in here till we clarify the first question. And who's liable? Is the company liable or is the individual liable? In other words, the workers were part of a company. I hired the company sent over the workers were negligent. So who has to pay? In real clear, in other words, do I have a claim directly against the workers, or are the workers allowed to say, look, we're hired hands, go to the company? You didn't pay us, we're not making the money, the company's making the money, so go to the company, and then let the company worry.
But Jewish law, does he have to go above for the workers or for?
Well, we can't begin to answer that question until we've answered the first question. See, that's a second question. First, I got to know whether I am going to be dealing as a plaintiff. Will I be dealing with the workers as defendants, or will I be dealing with the company as the defendants, and then let the company run after the workers? I'm not going to answer that question. It's very complicated. Okay, but see, many times we have to answer preliminary questions before we can answer the next step. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next case. The next case is a very nice, very fascinating case. Again, something that you'd never imagine it in our business world today. Okay, Rav Gidel was negotiating to purchase a field. All right, a word of introduction. Again, there's another law. There's a law that says as follows, and we'll see it introduced here, but I want to give you the background so you'll recognize the phrase. The law, the paradigm statement is, Ani ha-mehapech becharara. Ani is a poor person. Mehapech means that he's working or turning something over. Becharara, a cake. What are we talking about? Now, you can imagine today we have bakeries. Now, at the end of the day, a bakery, if you come in, the bakery starts at 6 o'clock in the morning and they close at 8 o'clock at night. So if you come in at 6 o'clock in the evening, you can probably get the bagels and the cookies for half price because they can't resell them the next day, right? What do they do at 8 o'clock? Okay, so there was half-price bagels and half-price cookies at 6. And they didn't sell all of them. Now it's 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, so there will be bakeries who will donate it to an institution. Okay. So in those days, they had poor people who were walking around trying to convince. Now, does the owner of the bakery have a requirement to give it to anybody?
No.
There's no law. You can't enforce giving it to anybody. He gets to choose who he wants. And so the poor people used to vie for the eye of the baker to try to get him to give them the cake. So the halacha says like this, that if there is a poor person who has started working with a baker, he's after the baker to try to get the cake. He has his eye on a cake and he's waiting there till 8:01 and he's already said something to the baker and, hey, I'm here and I'm waiting and if nobody sells it, will you give it to me? And, well, okay, we'll see it, right? Okay. And you're watching this and you come in and you, before the baker made a decision, tell the baker, hey, how about giving it to me? Okay? Did the second guy do anything illegal?
No.
Why didn't he do anything illegal?
Because
Who owns that cake at that moment? Who owns the cake?
the baker.
And who makes the decision to whom to give it?
The baker.
What rights does the first poor person have? What legal rights does that first poor person have? None. So the second guy did nothing illegal.
Right.
Everybody with me? However, we say that he's nikra rasha. He's called an evil person. Because the first guy is already in negotiations. He's got his eye on it. He's expecting to get it. And you come in, zoom in from left field and pull it away from him. So you did nothing technically in violation of the law. You're just an evil person. You're nikra rasha. Okay? And the reason being, and this comes back to something that Hesh alluded to when we were talking about adjacency, is that if there's only one baker in the whole town and there's only one cake left, all right, and one poor person is negotiating for it, it may not be evil for another guy to come in because he has no choice. The reason it makes him an evil person is because we say to him, why are you focusing on a cake that's already somebody has his eye on it? There are 5 other bakers. Go find somewhere else to get a cake. Okay? So that's the background.
Similar uniqueness thing to the.
Something along those lines. Yes. Okay. Now let's go back into our case. So Rav Gidel is negotiating to purchase a field, and Rabbi Abba went and bought it. So I hope you already smell here that there's a problem, because Rav Gidel was negotiating and Rabbi Abba bought it. So Rav Gidel, who was negotiating and lost the field, went and complained to Rabbi Zera, who was his Rebbe. Rabbi Zera went and complained to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, who was the Gadol Hador. He was the leader of the entire community. And he complained. They're lodging a complaint against against Rabbi Abba, that Rabbi Abba did something unethical. Everybody following the story so far? Okay, so it went to Rabbi Zera, it went up the food chain to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. They want Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha to do something about it, and he said when Rabbi Abba comes up, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha found him, and as he waited till Rabbi Abba was visiting the town, and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha found him and said to him the following case: a poor person who is examining a cake, and someone comes and takes it from him. What's the law? Well, Rabbi Abba knew the law, and he said, not suspecting what was coming, he said, he's called an evil person, which is the law. So Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha said to Rabbi Abba, so why did you do this? So why did you do it? Why did you buy the field that Rav Gidel was negotiating for? And Rabbi Abba's response was, I didn't know. I didn't know that Rav Gidel was negotiating for the field. Meaning, had I known, what's he saying? Had he known,
Wouldn't have bought it.
I never would have bought it. Because I did, the only reason, I did it innocently.
Yes.
I did it innocently. So now what do we got now? So where are we right now? So we have Rav Gidel who lost the field because Rabbi Abba innocently bought it, not knowing that Rav Gidel was negotiating. However, if he would have known that Rav Gidel was negotiating, he never would have bought it. Fine. Let's stop here, guys, and say, now how would you suggest solving this problem?
I'd go back to the seller. If he already was in negotiations.
No, it's sold already. It was sold already.
No, but
Rabbi Abba bought it already.
The person who's negotiating with Rabbi Gidel, who then knowingly, while in the moment of negotiation, turns around and sells it to someone else.
Yeah.
Why isn't he called Russia?
He's allowed to do. He has no liability to anybody. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's not required. He's allowed to. The same way that the baker who gave the cake to the second guy after the first guy was asking for it. He's in it. He's out. He can do whatever he wants. He's not the Rasha. It's the guy who took it away from the first guy that's the Rasha. So how would you guys solve this problem?
Is he still a Rasha if he didn't know he was doing it?
Probably not.
Problem solved.
You mean just let it stay?
I would, if he didn't know.
He didn't know.
Offered to sell it to the first guy for what he bought it for.
I think that the simple solution would be that if Rabbi Abba said that had I known, I never would have done it, and Rav Gidel is out the field. Rav Gidel feels that he was sideswiped. So what are you telling to Rabbi Abba? What you're telling Rabbi Abba is, had you known, what would have happened? Had you known, what would have happened? You wouldn't have bought it. So where would we be? You would have your money. Rav Gidel would have the field. Correct? So right now, what have you got? You've got the field, and the seller has his money. Well, Rav Gidel is still ready to pay money for the field. Correct? So wouldn't the simple solution be let Rabbi Abba sell the field to Rav Gidel?
But it's not so simple.
Why not?
If time has passed and Rabbi Abba has already put someone.
No, but of course, obviously that's not. If that would be true, I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't say we're dealing literally a week later. Okay, they finished escrow yesterday.
But then maybe Rabbi Abba has refused some other offers that he was negotiating in other fields, and there might be some other implications.
So he's got to flip it?
Rabbi Abba, but Rabbi
He wanted to
Abba.
buy a field, but he was negotiating with 5 sellers of field. He said, I'm sorry, I already bought A, so the other 4, you do whatever you want.
So what you're telling me is you certainly couldn't enforce this. The question is, would this be, if none of this would be true, wouldn't it be a good recommendation to Rabbi Abba? Maybe Rabbi Abba himself should have even thought about himself. Is that you're saying that I don't want to be called a Rasha, except I did it inadvertently. Inadvertently, I took something away from you that you were negotiating.
Right.
So I would have thought my solution would be fine. So let Rabbi Abba just take the purchase price from Rav Gidel and start looking for another field.
Yeah.
I think that makes perfect sense. Well, that's exactly what Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha suggested. So now you should return it to him. So Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha said, in that case, you, Rabbi Abba, should sell the field to Rav Gidel or return it to the seller and let the seller sell it to Rav Gidel. But the idea is, he means sell it to Rav Gidel. I think that's the most reasonable solution. Look at Rabbi Abba's response. Rabbi Abba said, I will not sell it because it is my first piece of land and it's not a good omen. Not a good omen to sell the first piece of land you bought. So he doesn't want to sell it. Okay? So now you're thinking, it's very nice that he wants to be Kabbalistically covered at somebody else's expense.
Wait, you're not allowed to ever sell your property? Or?
The first property he ever bought. This was the first time he ever purchased a piece of property. Okay, so talk to investors. They have a special affinity for the first deal they ever made. Okay? So, but listen to what Rabbi said. If he wants it as a present, he can take it. I won't sell it to him, but I'm ready to give it to him as a present. I told you guys you could never imagine this happening in our world. Okay? He doesn't want to sell it because it's a bad omen, but he doesn't want to retain a property that because of this property he's going to be termed a rasha. He wants to get it over to Rav Gidl.
So you're willing to give it.
Yes, as a present. Sound good? Sounds great. Now look what happened. Rav Gidl did not take possession of the land. Rav Gidl refused to take it as a present. For it is written, one who hates presents will live. We don't like presents. Rav Gidl says, I'm not taking a present. I'm ready to pay for it, but I'm not taking it as a present. Rabbi Abba said, I'm ready to give it as a present, but I'm not ready to sell it. We're at an impact. You guys can't imagine this happening, right? But
It wouldn't happen.
it would. Well, but here when we're dealing here with people who view money, and this is one of the issues here. If you view money as a vehicle for holiness, and you view money and possessions as another way to serve God, so then you look at your money as a vehicle for spiritual elevation, and therefore by giving it away, I will elevate myself spiritually, and by taking it as a present, I will diminish my spirituality. So I won't take it as a present. And the other guy says, I want to give it away. I don't want to sell it. I want to give it away because I don't want to have a field. I don't want to have a field that I got under shady circumstances, even though they were not illegal, and I didn't know. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting now with a field that really is not 100% kosher, not 100% kosher. So what was the ultimate resolution? Rabbi Abba didn't take possession of the law because Rav Gidl had been negotiating for it. Neither this one took nor that one took possession. And it was called the land of the rabbis, available freely to their students. In other words, the two of them agreed, we're going to make it open for public use. Public use land. Okay? So again, the secret here is, how do I view money? How do I view property? How do I view material resources? So to go to the opposite extreme, right? And when a guy is worth $500 million and he's working very hard to make more money, is it possible to spend $500 million in a lifetime? $1 billion in a lifetime? Can you spend $1 billion in a lifetime?
Possible, yeah. You can,
Really?
it's possible, yeah. You could buy an airplane for $250 million.
Your campus for Chappelle's?
That's not called spending. That's called using it spiritually.
You talking about spending?
Spending on consumption. Consumption. Can you consume $5 billion? Most people who have $5 billion view it. Why are they still working for more money? Because money is the way we keep score. No? You guys are in the business world a little bit? You get that sense? This is how we keep score. Because I have no intention of buying a jet, right? And I have no intention of, right? But I just want to have more money, right? J. Paul Getty, you may have heard the name, but he was a billionaire in the 1950s when countries were not worth $1 billion. He was one of the richest, probably the richest person in the world in the 1950s. And he used to work very hard every day. He used to put in long hours. And once somebody asked him, Mr. Getty, you're such a wealthy man, and you keep working for more money. How much money is going to be enough? Just a little more. Just a little more. Basically, the rabbis tell us that a person who has 100 wants 200. A person who has 200, the continuing of the Mishnah?
What's that?
So what Hesh said is what my instinct would have told me. Guy has 100, he wants 200. He has 200, he wants 300. Right? But that's not what it says. Guy who has 100 wants 200. Guy who has 200, he wants 400.
It's exponential.
So there are two questions to ask there. A, why doesn't the guy who wants 100 also want 400? When the guy wants 100, he wants 200. And the guy who wants 200, he wants 400. Why doesn't the guy who has 100 want 400? And if we're already going to say that the guy who has 100 wants 200, the guy who has 200 should want 300. Be happy. Wow, Ian really has a romantic vision. Okay? Right? You wanted 100 and you got 200. I'm sorry, you had 100, you wanted 200. You got the 200, says Ian, be happy. Right? Says Hesh, okay, I can understand. He wants a little more, just a little more. No, but the Mishnah says when he has 200, he wants 400. Okay? So there are a number of lessons there. First of all, The guy who has 100 has no concept of 400. Right? As, each of you guys are sitting here, so you probably have your financial goals. I don't think anybody has a financial goal of being worth $10 billion. Okay? I don't know if the name Ivan Boesky means anything to you. Yeah, unless you studied economics and legal ethics in college, it probably doesn't. But Ivan Boesky was probably the first major guy in the 1980s who was convicted of insider trading. He went to jail for a good number of years, insider trading. He was like, all these, the movies, Wall Street and all that stuff about all that stuff. He was one of the inventors of the system in a big way. There was always, insider trading was always illegal, but he developed a system of doing it and hopefully getting away with it. How much money was Ivan Boesky worth when he started insider trading? When I read this, I was blown away. How much money was Ivan Boesky worth when he started insider trading? Anybody have any idea?
50 million?
500,000.
You're going in the wrong direction.
How much? I said 5 million.
You said 50 million, right? Right. And Andre said
100,000.
100,000. And I'm telling you, you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
He was worth $300 million.
Wow.
What?
Yes, exactly. So Josh is saying, wait, why is a guy worth $300 million? I understand why a guy worth $300 million is still putting in 18 hours in the office, trying to more. Insider trading? So here's the secret. He married into a family where they were billionaires. His wife's family were billionaires. And they looked at Ivan Boesky as chump change. And he felt that. He had that deep insecurity that he's not living up to the standards of his wife's family. Now, if you are worth $300 million and you need to turn it into $1 billion fast, insider trading is the only way. But it's amazing that you could have so a guy who has $1 million has no concept of 300 million or $1 billion. A guy who has $1 million, he has a concept of 200 million, of 2 million, of 5 million. But that's the point. The point is that when money is viewed as anything except what it's supposed to be used for, it becomes insatiable. I'll tell you a great story that Abraham Tversky, it's a joke that makes the world of psychiatry. And the joke is hilariously funny until we replace a couple of elements. And then all of a sudden, it makes us stop and think. Here's the story. A knock-knock joke. Okay? You're the psychiatrist. I'm the patient. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
I'm a patient here to see you.
Okay, I'm a patient to see.
No, I'm the patient to see a psychiatrist. You're the psychiatrist.
Okay.
Patient who?
Patient who?
Rabbi Karlinsky.
Huh?
Rabbi Karlinsky?
I'm here to see you. I'm here to see a psychiatrist. Oh, come on, guys. What would be the...
Joke?
There's no... Let's role play. You'll get it. This is a real story. Let's start. How would you play this out if you were a psychiatrist? Somebody knocks on your door and says, I'm here to see the psychiatrist. I need a psychiatrist.
What's the problem?
I love pancakes.
What's so good about pancakes?
Well, maybe I should say first, I'm here because my family said I'm crazy.
So why did your family say you're crazy?
Because I love pancakes.
Why do you love pancakes?
I love pancakes. So now I got to take over. Till here, you guys got it, right? I knock on the door. Why are you here? I'm here because my family sent me. Why did your family send you? Because I love pancakes. They say I'm crazy. I love pancakes. Love pancakes? That's not crazy. What's wrong with loving pancakes? The psychiatrist, says I also love pancakes. So the patient's eyes light up. You also like pancakes. You must come and visit me. I've got 10,000 pancakes in the attic. Got it? Why is that funny? Well, why does that sound hilarious?
It's so innocuous.
Because a guy who has 10,000 pancakes in the attic is crazy.
Yes.
Right? Why is he crazy?
It's not the appropriate place for them. It's far.
Oh, they're in the freezer. They're in the freezer.
Well, the quantity's far too.
Because-
The quantity. If I would have a dozen pancakes in my freezer, you wouldn't have a problem. I just have a problem because I have 10,000 pancakes in my freezer.
Right.
But if I have 12 pancakes in my freezer, no problem. Why? Because the person, listen, you come home, you don't have time. Okay, so 12 pancakes in the freezer is okay because you can use the pancakes. 10,000 pancakes in the freezer, that's insane. Now take out the word pancakes, put in the word money, take out the word freezer in the attic, and put in the word mutual funds or portfolio. Okay? If a guy would have $500 million in his portfolio, what could you do with $500 million? You're not going to consume it again. You're not going to buy a corporate jet. People do that. People hoard money in an account to have the money, but not for the purpose for which it's given. So you need a cushion, a rainy day, but people accumulate money just to accumulate money. And we envy them. But the guy who accumulates pancakes just to accumulate pancakes, we think he's crazy.
So, right, but, you know, obviously the glaring discrepancy in.
I'm listening.
analogy,
I'm listening to a
but-
glaring
I
discrepancy.
Is, well, 10,000, the quantity of pancakes until you get to excessive that you don't need is fairly discernible, right? Okay, well, argue 10, maybe 20, maybe
Right.
50, someone might argue.
Right,
okay,
exactly.
50.
When you get to 10,000, you know you're off base.
Money, on the other hand, is a little different.
That's the problem. That's exactly the point. The reason is because we don't view what's the test? What's the test? At what point do the pancakes become unreasonable? And we say the guy who's hoarding those kinds of pancakes is insane. The answer is, what are you going to do with the pancakes? If the guy would be a caterer, he's a caterer and he runs a breakfast restaurant. So then the fact that he has 1,000 pancakes in his freezer would be absolutely reasonable.
Not
Right?
if
But
he's
the-
selling it as fresh.
But
Okay.
yeah,
More than you can ever consume.
As an individual, but if I'm running a business, very possible, right? If I cater,
A large
I
catering, 10,000?
exactly, they're very reasonable. So I've got to know what is the purpose of having it? Do you have it for the purpose for which it was given? Money was not given to hoard. Money was not given to hoard. Money was given to use. God gives us money to use. How are you going to use it? Okay, now using it means appropriately in the service of God. I'll let you do the next case on your own. The next case has to do with whether when I say a word as opposed to sign a contract. This actually goes back to the Paul Reichman case in a certain level, right? That when a person agrees to do something verbally, but there's been no contract and there's been no concrete commitment, but there was a verbal statement. Are you bound by that? Are you bound by your verbal commitments? So I believe that in secular law, a verbal commitment is considered contractual. It's only a question. It's only a question of proving it. It's only a question of proving it. In Jewish law, that's not true. In Jewish law, it's absolutely not true. In other words, if I say, I would like to buy that chumash from you, it's yours, I'd like to buy it from you, how much do you want? You say $20. I say, fine, I'm going to buy it. I'll be back in a few minutes with the money. Meanwhile, while I'm gone, somebody else comes along and offers you $25 for it. You're allowed to sell it to him. And if I come back and I say, you know what, along the way I found somebody who's going to sell it to me for $15, I'm absolutely, there's no binding contract. What makes it binding? You want to hand that to me for a second? The chumash. Just hand me the chumash. I'll illustrate the point. However, if it's your chumash, I'd like to buy it for $20. Yes, fine. I make a kinyan. I lift it up more than 3 tfachim. When I do that, now I'm bound. I can't back out, you can't back out. You find somebody after I lifted it up to give you $25, too bad, you're stuck. You have to give it to me for $20. If afterwards I find somebody who's going to sell me the same thing for $10, I'm stuck. I must pay you the $20 and take it. That's called a kinyan. That's a contractual obligation, but here we don't have a contract, we have what's called a kinyan. And different things have different mechanisms of kinyan. That makes it irreversible. But verbal commitments are not necessarily binding on a legal, they're not enforceable in court. They're not enforceable in court. There are various levels. I'm sorry, what?
You get a curse or something?
Oh, so depending on the circumstances, that's what this Gemara is about. Depending on the circumstances, one might be liable for something called misha para. It's a court-inflicted bad vibes kind of a thing, where you're not standing up to your words. That's only when you when you didn't have a good excuse. And a good excuse means I committed to buy it and then all of a sudden I lost all my money. Or I committed to buy it because I was expecting, I had a customer for it. I'm buying it because I had a customer. And then all of a sudden the customer dropped dead and now I have no customer. Then I'm allowed to back out with no consequences. But if I committed to buy it and then on the way home I said, oh, you know what, I just figured out how I can get it cheaper. And because of that, you lost a customer, then so again, it's not legally enforceable in court, even though you lost a customer, but as long as there was no kinyan, it's reversible. However, it's considered bad vibes. Okay, so really the conclusion here is what we talked about in money. You have to know what the purpose of money is. And again, the Jewish purpose of money is very different than keeping score. And we view money as an asset, as a resource that God gives us to help serve Him better. Now we can serve Him better by giving it in charity. We can serve Him better by educating our children. You guys, if you're moving into the Orthodox world, you better know the deep, dark secret of Orthodoxy is that you need to have an income of 2 to 3 times what you were expecting as a non-Orthodox Jew if you want to maintain an Orthodox lifestyle. right? When you get finished with kosher food and all of the ritual objects you have to buy, plus Jewish education, it's, whatever lifestyle you thought you were going to maintain at a certain level of income, double it. Okay? But that's okay. That means God gives me money to serve Him. And, so taking a vacation once a year so that my wife is happy and I'm feeling good and I'm able to be more productive, that's also part of the service of God. But frivolously spending money on all kinds of nonsense things, all right, or ostentatious consumption to make the neighbor's eyes drop out, that's not such a spiritual activity. We want to look at our resources and say, and this goes back to the Asita Yashar V'Atov, at the end of the day, we want to behave in a godlike fashion. And a godlike fashion requires us to treat our money as a resource for spiritual growth. Any questions?
How come
Yeah.
it seems like all these examples are either about overly wealthy people or overly poor people? There's no middle road. It's easy if a poor person comes to you, and then you give to them because they need it more than you.
That happens to be an excellent question. In fact, one of the ways to explain that first case of Rabbi Bar Chana with the porters, it could be, one of the ways to possibly explain it, is that Rav was demanding from Rabbi Bar Chana to forego the damages and or to pay wages because he was a very wealthy person. And a very wealthy person, we say to him, you know what, you can afford it. There happens to be a halakha about that. Here's the halakha. Again, I don't have it in this section because we kept it short, but I'll say this one outside. It's in my Hebrew version. The law is that if a person... you know that there's a mitzvah to return a lost object. Mitzvah to return a lost object to a Jew. But if the lost object has no indicating sign, then you're not required to return it. You're not required to return it. The assumption is that the owner gave up hope and you don't have to return it. If the object has an identifying element and you pick it up, you're required to return it. One exception. If the owner gave up hope on ever getting it back before you picked it up, and then you picked it up, and you know whose it is, but you know that he gave up hope of ever getting it back. It's called Yeush. Oy, I'll never see this again. So the Torah says once a person gave up hope on ever retrieving his lost object, if you find it after that time, you're allowed to keep it. You don't have a responsibility to give it back. Okay? Those are the laws. So the Gemara talks about somebody who knows who lost the object, but he knows that he's finding it after the person gave up hope. So the law says you're allowed to keep it. However, lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law, it would be appropriate to return it. Make sense? Okay. There's an exception. The exception is when the loser is a wealthy person and the finder is a poor person. If the loser is a wealthy person and the finder is a poor person, we do not require the finder to return it, even if he knows whose it is, even beyond the letter of the law, which makes perfect sense. Because for the poor person, going beyond the letter of the law is a luxury, and this poor person can't afford it. And the wealthy person doesn't need it. Now, there's another aspect here, okay? Why do we make a regular person return it? Because at the end of the day, if the regular person keeps it, he made money at somebody else's expense. Right? The average person who lost it, he lost. And you, the guy who found it, before you found it, you had a certain financial state, and now you found it. So you increased your net worth. And if you have to give it back, did you lose money or are you just back where you started from?
You're back where you started from.
That's why we demand from you to go beyond the letter of the law. As opposed to saying that if I owe you money and it's very hard for me to pay, beyond the letter of the law does not require you to lose money to go beyond the letter of the law. Okay? Again, unless you're very wealthy, and again, even then it's not required. The going beyond the letter of the law itself has various parameters about when I require it, when I don't require it. Okay, I hope that.
But just like the example with the land, it was like, well,
Yes.
As a modest person, I had mediocre means. If I'm buying this land, it's like that's everything I have to buy this land, and maybe the other person who was trying to buy it.
Oh, we're not gonna require you to lose it. We're gonna give you all your money back.
But I'm saying the scenario where the solution that the came up with.
Oh, I see. Oh,
That
excellent.
makes
Yeah.
it more realistic. It's an
Yeah.
average person.
For sure,
They
for
were
sure,
extremely
for
wealthy.
sure, we would not, absolutely. Oh, that I understand what you're saying. Absolutely, 100% correct. You're 100% correct. We would not require that from poor people, or even you got to be able to afford it, or it's got to be so important to you. This is not something the court would ever enforce. It's got to be something that's so important to you that you're ready to let it go for free and not take money. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Judge.
Thank
Okay.
you.